Thank you. Thank you for having me.
I'm glad you're here. I got to look at your website. Love it. Um, let's talk about you first for just a second. Why you left the corporate world to start Self Reboot?
Necessity. Honestly, I call it living because it's kind of like living. I worked in a very intense environment. It was commercial real estate. And because of all that stress, the environment, I ended up getting really, really sick. And then I taught myself these tools. It's not just yoga, it's not just exercise, it's everything. It's nutrition, it's mindfulness. So learning all these tools, I wanted to share it with people because unfortunately we all have to work and stress is never going to go away. But if I could teach people what I learned so they could live a healthier lifestyle, then that's what I wanted to do.
Even if they don't have to work, it's still got stress in their life. I get it.
Absolutely,
It's
yeah.
everywhere.
Yeah.
Corporate
I think,
wellness. Go ahead. I'm sorry. I didn't
no,
mean
no,
to
no, I guess for me, like the corporate kind of was it's so hurtful to me because living in that environment and not having any help and going to doctors for 2 years and not getting any diagnosis or anything was really, really frustrating. And honestly, at some point, I just didn't even want to live anymore. So that's why the corporations really, stick to my heart because I just want to help people and explain to them and also explain to the leaders and explain to the people that own the companies or the management that we need to help people. We need to give these people tools, like let them know that there are ways to deal with stress so you don't get sick, so you can survive and strive.
I get that. The workplace resiliency is the topic that you're going to bring up for us. Do that.
All right. So workplace resiliency, for me, what I teach everyone is that there's 4 buckets, right? First of all, self-care, social, mindfulness, and then, can we stop for a second? Sorry.
Yeah,
Just
sure.
edit.
Take a deep breath.
Yeah.
Drink some water.
So yeah, I know, right? What's so funny? You can do this all the time, but when someone records you, you get like totally flustered and you forget what you're saying. That's not good. Oh, 1 second. I have the wrong slide up, so let me just pick that up 1 second. Um, Second, just want to get this going. And okay. So I was all prepared for Stress Less and Save More because I forgot what I sent you guys. All right. Okay. Got it. Okay. So,
I threw you for a curve on the workplace resiliency.
mm-hmm.
Okay.
So, okay, I'm sorry.
We're going to do this again, so get good on your feet, girl. We're going to tango.
Okay. All right. Got it.
All right, you ready?
Mm-hmm.
Excuse me, that's my turn. Workplace. Okay. Ready? 1, 2, 3. Workplace resiliency. Tell me what you mean by that.
Well, there's 4 essential practices for resilience, which is social involvement, mindfulness, gratitude, and self-care. And one thing about resiliency, it can be learned and it can be developed in anyone. And when we're more resilient, we get through stress and we build this foundation for ourselves. So it's easier to get through those stressful times quicker and smoother. So the 4 buckets, social involvement, like building connections are vital for resiliency. You want to bond with your colleagues, right? You want to get involved with projects at work. You want to participate in team activities, even volunteer at a local charity. Try something new because social connections will impact your health just as much as diet and exercise. And that's according to the National Academy of Sciences. And not only that, you want to be friends with people at work, right? You want to have some type of rapport. You don't want to go to work and not be happy, right? It's kind of like when I was working in corporate, I call them my dysfunctional family in some ways because we worked crazy hours, 24/7. And if I didn't have that network, if I didn't have those people to count on, I would have never made it through. So it's really, really important to have those relationships at work. My second is self-care. Think about it. When you go on an airplane and the stewardess says to you, put your mask on. Well, I'm not going to say stewardess because that's being, let's say when the flight attendant says to you, put your mask on before the other person. Why they say that is because you can't help anyone. If you don't help yourself, you can't help that person next to you. So when I was working 24/7, I didn't exercise. My nutrition was horrible. It was ever the menu that was that day. I ate breakfast, lunch, and dinner there. I didn't get around. I didn't do any type of exercise. And it really, I wasn't taking care of my needs. And forget about sleep and mindfulness, because mindfulness wasn't even there at that point. But self-care is really the exercise, the nutrition, mindfulness, sleep. I remember I thought I was Superwoman, that I didn't need sleep, that I could function with anything without sleep. But we need to sleep. So number 2 is self-care. Mindfulness, for me, I honestly did not learn mindfulness until probably about 5 years ago. And that changed my world, because being a type A personality with a mind that constantly thinks all the time, like thoughts, I see things, I think of things, I had to retrain my brain and to stop the noise and to quiet the noise. And even though I'm a yoga instructor, stress management expert, and I teach people tools, I will be the first to admit I can't meditate. I can't sit down and be quiet, but how I meditate is I move. I'll walk when I meditate, I'll cook, I'll listen to music. That's how I meditate. Or a guided meditation. I do a guided meditation because they do help. But for me to sit there quietly for 20 minutes 2 times a day, I couldn't do it. And I kind of tell people that I work with that you shouldn't put so much stress on yourself just to meditate. So meditation, mindfulness, you can get that same feeling by doing something you love. Because the moment that you stop thinking about the past or the future or what's going on and what's bothering you, and you just get into that one moment and you really get into it, either it's cooking or listening to music or walking or gardening, that's your mindfulness, that's your mind, that's yourself that's your meditating. You know, it's quieting the noise in your brain. It's rethinking, it's not acting right away, because we all seem to act. In the corporate resiliency, what happens, you know, there's a lot of different personalities and moods are extremely contagious. So now all of a sudden you take on that person's mood. So mindfulness is going to play a really, really big part into how you stay resilient at work. So before you shoot off that email or before you go back at someone, just take that pause, take that breath, step away from the situation, be mindful before saying something.
Well said, and very soothing.
Thank you. I mean, it's so important. And gratitude. Have you ever heard about like the happiness habits, the happiness hygiene, positive psychology? So with moods, we can retrain our brain. Once again, like resiliency can be learned and developed in anyone. So if you would do a practice, and I do this now every night before I go to bed, and say 3 things that you're grateful for, but not what, but also why. Like tonight, I'm grateful for having this interview with you. I'm grateful to be able to share my thoughts and my practices. So that's my what and my why, right? And if you write 3 things that are different every day, you're going to notice that you become less of a pessimist and more of an optimist. You're starting to think happy. Because the more that you retrain your brain, the more that you kind of, even if you write it down, journalizing, like I write down every night 3 things that I'm extremely grateful for, and the reason why. Because when you write it, you experience it once again. So it's important, because a lot of times we just look at the world and we say everything that we don't have, or everything that's not good. But if you really take the time and look and see what happened that day, what something magical happened that day, what did somebody do for you? Or maybe what did you do for somebody? Maybe you're grateful for doing for something to someone. And that's really going to help, because at the end of the day, resiliency, it's not just one thing. It's those 4 buckets: social involvement, mindfulness, self-care, gratitude. And if you have a happy environment at work, what's going to happen?
You're going to be happier.
You're going to be more productive. Right?
And you're going to create an environment that's contagious about happiness around you.
Absolutely. And I think this world needs it today. Because I have to say, 10 years ago, I was not in a happy place at all. My story is kind of crazy, but it was just a very intense environment and where I didn't get sleep, and it was constantly, putting out fires. I dealt with brokers who were being yelled at. So if I could spread this happiness, it would be a greater place. And that's like my only keys to me to staying in this, realm. And even being an entrepreneur, owning your own business, trying to find business, doing things, it's not easy, right? But how I stay that way is I make sure that I continue to be resilient. I manage the stress. with the self-care. You know, it's so important to exercise, to eat right, to be mindful, and to sleep. That's another topic. I never used to sleep, and now I'm so happy. I got 8 hours of sleep last night, and I feel great today. So.
Great. Dawn, you really lifted my day. I'm going to have you on again and again. We need these little excerpts of self-wellness and rebooting. And I think, I want to continue the conversation later, but for today, it's been a marvelous experience for me to have you on the show.
Well, thank you. I'm really, really happy that we got the chance to talk and meet. So thank you.
Me too. The rest of my day is going to be a lot better after this one.
All right. Have a great day. Thank you.
You're welcome. All right. You've been watching CEO Money with Michael Yorba. Thanks for tuning in with us. Like us on Facebook, follow us on Twitter, and subscribe to our YouTube channel.